The fact is, there has never been a single study on the human safety of these products. Any implications to the contrary is a pure fabrication. Make the corporate apologists produce a single study, and they cannot. The important point is this. Among scientists, the scientific community is deeply divided as to whether these foods are safe or not. So the burden of proof is on industry. And so far, the corporations have failed to demonstrate the safety of these foods on humans through a single study.
Can I assure consumers that that scientifically the benefits of genetically modified foods outweigh the risks? And I mean, I can't. How that plays out in society and in the global world that we live in, who knows? I mean, you can point to many examples in the past of science run amok.
They very well know that most people wouldn't buy it. That's the reason why they refuse to put a label on it, and they just want a label that says it may contain genetically modified food. We don't want that. We want something that tells us it does not contain genetically modified food. It never got in touch with genetically modified elements through the process of production.
Well, Europeans basically are ahead of Americans in the sense that they decided several years ago that they didn't want anything genetically altered in their food supply. And we've seen very significant protests in the United Kingdom, in France, increasingly in Germany and other parts of Europe.
I think we need to look at the history of Monsanto to see what they have to contribute. They were the big producers of DDT in the United States, which turned out to be a mistake. Producers of Agent Orange, the defoliant used in Vietnam, which the Vietnamese people are still paying a price for in births of deformed babies and so on. Producers of BST additive in milk in America, which has caused so much controversy. And now they're producing a soybean, which they tell us is safe. And looking at their record, I'm not convinced.
From science and politics to culinary culture and food safety, the issues that surround genetically engineered food affect everyone. When scientists are radically divided and many governments are failing in the arena of food safety, people around the world want to be more informed to understand the issues. People want assurance that the food they're eating is safe. What is this new DNA-altering technology?
Genetic modification, that is the changing of the information that's inside of our cells. That information tells our bodies what to do. It says whether we have curly hair or straight hair, blue eyes or green eyes. All of that information is contained inside of the cell.
Over thousands of years, farmers and growers have been in the process of changing the genetic information within certain crop varieties. Hybridization, a process of crossbreeding plant varieties to improve on favorable characteristics, has produced foods like larger yielding tomatoes, hardy wheat stock, and the seedless grape.
So for example, corn, which is this gigantic ear now, originally looked more like a stalk of rice. And it had very hard kernels, and it wasn't very productive.
Some of the best varieties of canola and wheat have been developed by farmers, not by research or scientists. Scientists took, or research people took, the original seeds from farmers and maybe further improved on them. But the basic development was done by farmers.
Traditional methods of crossbreeding plant varieties to improve on favorable traits include manually splicing plants together and cross-pollination, which can be applied or may occur naturally. Both methods are successful only within the same species.
So if we represent, for example, the information in your cell or in the cell of a wheat plant, it contains a lot of chemical units, and they're all together in a big long string. And if we represent each one of those chemical units by an alphabetic letter, it takes about 1.8 million pages to represent all that information. So it's a lot of information. When we do genetic engineering, we will move a piece of information, a gene, that's equivalent to about a half a page of information.
Each of the hundreds of millions of life forms on this planet has highly complex genetic information, often the result of millions of years of evolution. For another perspective, there is less than 1% difference in the DNA that separates humans from the gorilla. Genetic engineers can now mix genes in a variety of different organisms. Some genetic experiments so far have explored mouse genes in potatoes, cow genes in soy and sugarcane, and even human genes in corn, potatoes, and rice.
Genetic engineering is a radical technology that allows us to take bits of DNA and genetic traits from insects, bacteria, viruses, even humans, and bring those into our food crops. Why? Because if you can teach a tomato, for example, to produce enough flounder blood, that tomato becomes frost resistant and hence more profitable. But a fabulous application of human technology, unless you're allergic to fish or your children are allergic to fish.
And we use something called a bombardment gun. It uses very small particles, very, very tiny. We coat that particle with DNA, and then we propel it at very fast speeds down a barrel, about 600 miles an hour. And some of those beads actually end up inside of a cell. And when they do, then the DNA uncoats from that bead or that bullet. And it then migrates and becomes then a heritable part.
Scientists are seriously divided over this new technology. For some, like Dr. Peggy Lameau, the potential benefits that genetic engineering promises will allow science to improve on nature from the human perspective. One genetic application currently in our food is a corn plant with its own built-in pesticide.
Farmers were told certain things. They were told by Monsanto, they went to a special invited meeting, that you'd have a bigger yielder, more nutritious, and most of all, less chemicals. And that really caught the eye of farmers because a lot of farmers are very concerned with the amount of chemicals we're using.
If through genetic engineering we can take that Bt gene and splice it into our corn, then our corn will produce enough built-in pesticide to make it deadly toxic to insects. And that's what we've done. Bt corn is so deadly toxic to insects that even the finest film from Bt corn kills the monarch butterfly. My concern is, what is the effect on us of eating corn with its own built-in pesticides? The problem is, nobody knows.
Bacillus thuringiensis, better known as Bt, is a naturally occurring bacterium that can be found in most natural soil samples. Organic farmers have used it for years as an insect spray because when Bt exists outside the plant, it is soon broken down by the sun and is known to be harmless to humans.
It is true that under circumstances of heavy pest attack, because the crop plant contains an insecticide, it's possible in the short term for farmers to make less applications of insecticide. But the key word is short term, because it's been shown that when the insecticide is present in the whole plant all of the time, insects develop resistance to it much more rapidly than they would under other circumstances.
By bringing Bt into corn, it's only a matter of time before pests become Bt resistant. And the moment pests become resistant to Bt, farmers and organic farmers will have lost one of their most effective pesticides, natural pesticides against pests, and that is Bt. So we're tipping nature out of balance. We're using natural pesticides where they are unnatural. And certainly over time, just as with antibiotics, we're going to develop drug-resistant pests.
This has been a hallmark of agriculture from the very beginning. You know, we have an herbicide or we have an insecticide, we overuse it, and voila, you know, it's not useful anymore. Do I think it's going to happen in this instance? Yes, I do. Do I know when? No.
If we have plants containing Bt insecticide, and after the harvest they're decaying in the soil, they continue to release that insecticide into the soil where they can interfere with natural microorganisms that play a key role in maintaining soil fertility. So there's a lot of unknowns with these insecticide-containing plants.